This episode of The Modern Rogue brought to you by Squarespace.
Go to squarespace.com/rogue and use promo code ROGUE when you sign up and get 10% off your first purchase.
Yeah, man, get a free trial. You just got to spell it right. R-O-G-U-E. I understand if you're not able to talk about this in a public forum, but what is the setting that allows you to talk to ghosts?
You can tell us, we're cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
no.
We're actually in psychic investigators.
Right. Well, the devices that the paranormal researchers use generally take a radio similar to this and they hack it up a little bit to cycle quickly through the broadcast spaces.
So they're doing the equivalent of pressing the scan button on your FM radio?
Right, but
just whatever they get?
For a short little microsecond. So maybe like a word. God, Dad, Brian.
Just press one of them and I'll talk to a ghost.
No,
I
well,
mean,
this is only a receiver.
I don't care what ghost, just a ghost. All right, we're here with Josh Nass of Ham Radio Crash Course.
Thank you.
Josh, you are going to tell us about the basics of radio.
Yeah, we're going to start small and then kind of work our way up.
Man, I can't believe we're saying this, but we're in an age where most people watching this have never learned how radio works.
So cars, right? Cars have AM, FM radios. When your phone doesn't work, you tune onto a frequency, right? And you've used like 98.5 or whatever.
In radio, which is basically light, it's just light that we
Correct.
can't
It exists-
see.
light we can't see.
So far I'm nailing it.
Yep.
In the electromagnetic spectrum exists on one continuum, and megahertz is the frequency of the
compression of the sine waves.
and as I understand it, AM is amplitude modulation.
Correct.
So think of a record player, right? We all know that you put a needle in the groove and then the wobbles turn into sound. In radio, you can modify stuff to make squiggles like a record player.
Right.
But the question is, what do you want to squiggle? So if you picture a wave,
Yep.
amplitude is the height,
vertical,
the volume,
the
vertical,
height,
vertical
the
of the
ups and
wave.
lows, the
Yeah,
highs
okay.
and lows.
So you modulate the amplitude
Correct.
to go high and low, high and low. So the squiggle is the difference between the two.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, AM is low fidelity, it's mono, but it has a very long reach. And it was the dominant form of radio up until like 1950s, early 1960s.
Right, and we still use it in amateur radio as well. It's still out there, but it requires a lot of power, right? That's why you see those huge towers. They're soaking up power to be able to get those frequencies, that radiated power out.
So in the early days, when most entertainment on radio was talk and news, that was fine. But as it became music, people realized that you could do frequency modulation. So
Which is
again,
where
you
take
have a wave.
The peaks of each of your wave and how close they are together determines
Right,
exactly
so that
how
becomes
it sounds.
the squiggle in the record player, right?
Right, it's now you're compressing the wave, right?
Okay.
So it's how many cycles you're getting.
Now we're at the edge of my understanding because I know that FM allowed higher fidelity broadcasts, but
Okay.
shorter range, and it also allowed stereo where
Right.
AM did not.
Right.
So FM won out because people wanted to hear
kids and their rock music.
their AC/DC
Yeah,
in
yeah.
stereo and
Yeah.
all that stuff. Why is the range shorter on FM versus AM?
It's generally line of sight. The waves will kind of dissipate at a certain point.
The ionosphere thing?
Yes.
Yeah, the ionosphere, that's the thing.
Yes.
For those who don't know, there's a bunch of ions in a sphere. It's the ionosphere, and
It's up there, you can't see it.
There's layers
Don't
of
be
atmosphere.
afraid.
and I guess depending on the wavelength of the transmission, some can be bounced back down.
Correct.
And go farther.
Right.
Others just go straight out to space.
Right, so we're talking about modes. We're talking about imparting information onto a radio wave radiation, right? So if you use FM, it's going to be the frequency timing, right? If
Right.
you're using AM, it's the amplitude.
Right.
I can apply that all over the RF frequency space. I can go to a very low megahertz range and I can send out AM and I could get that atmospheric propagation, that bounce.
okay.
But if I move up to the higher frequencies, it'll punch right through the atmosphere.
Got it. Here's the crazy part is even when you get into visible light, all the fundamentals still work. I was a projectionist and there was a strip down the side that modified the intensity of the
brightness.
light.
Yes.
And that's where the sound was on the 35 millimeter film.
Oddly enough, they use that for SSTV to control color too.
All right, we got too much. Okay. So we kind of understand AM, we kind of understand FM.
Right.
Explain to us all of shortwave, because that is a mystery to me.
Right. So you got shortwave, right? So it's a very wide space within the RF realm. Hams, the spaces that we're authorized to use are within the shortwave frequency
Okay,
space.
so ham is a subsection of shortwave.
It's a series of slices, yes. Shortwave goes from 1.7 megahertz up to, call it like 30 megahertz. The advantage of shortwave is that depending on the time of day affects which frequency space you'd want to use. During the daytime, you want to use a high frequency band, and as it gets darker, you want to move to the lower frequencies.
And I know that I've experienced, as I was on tour, that I was able to get AM stations from hundreds or possibly even thousands of miles away. You know, you're
Right.
up in the mountains. And is that just because you don't have the constant noise of all the RF from the sun?
Well, noise would be your ambient noise of all the technology and stuff around you. The further you get away from that, you're just going to receive a lot better.
Okay.
Your radio, it's going to bring the noise floor down, and then that's going to allow you to pick up the signals.
But the sun isn't a source of all that? It seems like it's always at night that I'm able to get those.
So that's why you change the frequencies down as the sun goes down. There's multiple layers of the atmosphere. And when the sun's up, it's a lower layer that's most intense, and that's where all the ionization is. So those frequencies, the higher frequencies, can propagate and bounce in that space. As you move to the nighttime, the atmosphere goes up to what's called the D layer, and then that's where you get also longer comms.
It's like a higher ceiling.
The frequency allows for it to propagate differently because of the density of the layers and the height of where it's at, where the ionization is at.
Okay, so we have a largely wide open space where a lot of broadcasters can jump into. How do you divvy up all these like bands of operation?
So that goes back to the FCC and the way we coordinate things. We'll have band slices, and it's a space of so many megahertz where certain allotments are allowed to different radio stations. Now, there are shortwave radio stations that are still out there. We run one of them in the United States. Australia has one, China has one, Cuba has one. Right?
Like government run?
Yeah, government run. In the past, during the Cold War, it was used as a propaganda tool, right?
Oh, we talked about number stations before.
Right, it has a espionage type background. That's not necessarily sanctioned by the FCC, or at least open. But those spaces, at least from the organized sense, we organize them because otherwise we'd just be transmitting on top of each other.
Now, wait a minute. Do all the countries work together on this, or are there bad actors that break the rules?
Yes,
okay.
On both accounts. So the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union, tries to kind of help organize how we use this RF space, because we're all using it together, right? The sun affects us all the same. So once you have an ITU decision, then all the countries start to kind of follow along. And you do have big booming stations that can go, you know, across the country, across the world.
Have you heard the legend that Wolfman Jack transmitted from
Mexico,
an illegal, overpowered antenna in Mexico, thereby by subverting FCC regulations, became essentially the first nationwide broadcast?
So I wouldn't be surprised by that. There are also stories of international waters. People setting up stations in international waters.
There was a movie with Philip Seymour Hoffman about that.
Pirate Radio,
Yeah, and so you can still get in trouble from the ITU from doing that?
Well,
or?
The enforcement would be the country of your origin. That's kind of why international waters is kind of a gray area. It's because, well, whose country do you belong to? You don't.
Has that become less or more enforceable as communications have shifted to other methods like internet and cell and so forth? Or are they just like, well, it's radio and he's out there in the ocean, who cares?
So like all things, when money's involved, they're really serious about it.
Okay.
So the FCC actually, you pay the FCC for your frequency allocation, right? You get your station call ID, right? And you use that and you're paying for that little sliver of space. Those transmitters only work in that little area because they don't need to go all over the place. That's where they operate. And if you've got a pirate station that's down the street and he's transmitting on that frequency, it's likely someone's going to come knock on your door from the FCC. And they do direction finding.
Yeah, they've got like triangulation bands and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've done that before. You can make a simple antenna to triangulate an RF location really easily, actually.
Back when we were talking about number stations, one of my favorite things we've ever done is set up a link at shortwave.themodernrogue.com where you can use a digital tuner from a university over in the Netherlands, I believe.
Ah, yes.
And you're able to see the waterfall and you're able
Correct.
to tune. It's like traveling through time and space all over the planet. I highly encourage everybody to do exactly that. But in my heart of hearts, I know that that is all an optimized setup at some kind of academic institution where they're doing everything right.
Not really.
What?
No. So that's called a web SDR, right? So you're accessing that radio through the internet.
Web SDR is?
Web software-defined radio.
Got it, yeah.
I have brought a software-defined radio today, and we'll be able to see that same waterfall. It will be localized signals to us, though. So we'll see this whole frequency space of shortwave, including the amateur radio, maybe pirate stations and number stations, but you got to be lucky for that.
Can we go do this right now?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So is this a desperate defense episode? Is that what's happening?
I thought it was a good idea to bring my own improvised weapon. So this is an arborist throwaway.
An arborist throwaway. So I assume this is designed to be soft so it doesn't break anything, but it's also designed to not be angly so it doesn't get hung up in branches.
You nailed it, yeah.
Okay, and the goal is we just want to get a coax cable as high as we can.
Coax comes later. This is just the line that we're going to then pull up a wire. And the wire is the most basic antenna with ham radio. A little more than that, but that's the basic idea. Sometimes going backwards to forwards helps, and you don't necessarily need a spin. Better.
We need that higher branch though, huh?
So I'm gonna assume that you want to have kind of like a cowboy.
If you think you can throw it that way, some of the trick though is if you're holding it in your offhand, you're not gonna be able to let go fast enough, and you don't want to rope burn yourself.
All right. Yeah, I'm just gonna drop it as soon as it goes.
Don't reset the injury counter on a radio video, okay?
Boom!
Nailed it!
That was perfect.
That'll do!
Well that was perfect. Yeah, that was textbook, so good work. So now we take the other end and we connect it to the wire. Most basic antenna in amateur radio is basically just a wire. This one has a box that helps kind of get it into tune.
Okay.
So we need to unravel this and get it up on the tree. So there's two portions to this. There's a ground portion, and then there's the aerial portion that we're gonna tie off.
Okay.
So just start walking and we'll unravel this out. Okay, so this is the aerial portion. So what we'll do, we will connect it to this guy and hoist it up by pulling that bag line in.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So do I keep on going once we hit the top?
Yeah, you will have wire in your hand.
Okay,
Keep
got it.
pulling until you get wire. There you go.
Okay.
So now
Now
we're
we've got
gonna
our
take
ground.
the ground. That's it.
Okay.
So go ahead and start.
Same thing, just go out this way?
Yeah, just go ahead and
Okay.
feed it out. Okay, good.
So this doesn't want to touch the ground. So we can run this all the way over to here.
Yeah, and that's actually not a bad place to tie it off, is right there.
Cool. All right, so we have a coax going from whatever our receiver is.
Right.
It splits into the aerial that goes as high as we can get it.
Yes.
And then an L shape out. And then we have a ground running as far out as we can get it.
Right.
So what's next?
Let's connect it to the radio and see what we got.
Okay.
All right, let's travel the world. How far can we go?
Well, we'll see. We got the wire in the air.
Yep.
We've got it connected to a software-defined radio and connected to the laptop.
Is it physically moving any gizmos, or is it just taking in all the input and just tuning down to...
Good question. It's giving all the RF to that box and feeding digital into the laptop. And then the laptop is doing the heavy lifting as far as parsing it out for the different modes.
Got it. So this is just collecting all the noise
Right.
from the sky.
Right.
And then the software is just like, all right, get out of here,
It's
all of you,
using its
except for
processing
this.
power to make it work.
And that's exactly what happens at the web software at shortwave.themodernroad.com.
Exactly. They may
Got
be
it.
using the same equipment.
You're
Yeah.
not redirecting satellites or
Not now.
anything like that.
We're just pulling up the broadcast band. I have it tuned to one of them, and I hit play, and we should see this.
I mean, that looks like white noise. That looks like
Exactly.
static.
So things that jump out are going to be these vertical dips.
There we go.
Right. So we're looking at around 1300 megahertz or 13 megahertz, and we're not seeing a lot of activity.
Okay.
So if I can just click through here, we may pick something up. So there we go.
So this is a chunk of the spectrum.
Correct.
And these are more fine-tuned, individual, precise locations.
Right. So if you're looking here, it goes from 11.6 all the way up to 12.1.
Yeah.
And this vertical lines that we see filling the black part of the
This
screen.
is the waterfall. This is what we saw on the Shortwave website.
Correct.
Yeah.
So this is the actual data or information that was embedded in the RF signal we're picking up right now. We happen to just be on a station right now.
Spanish.
Spanish station.
Yeah.
Get a lot of that back home too. Another
Some more
Spanish station.
Now this one looks like it's got kind of a dit dash thing. Is that data or is that talking?
Talking.
Just intermittently.
Yep. So one of the frequencies I generally go to when I'm setting up a radio for the first time to make sure that we know it's working is just 10 megahertz. So this is the time radio transmit
You can
frequency.
hear the tick-tock of the
It's in
clock.
Colorado, and it's on 10 megahertz, 2.5, and 5 megahertz. And so you can just basically check on your station at any time on this
Sorry,
frequency.
you said it's from Colorado? Is
Yes.
it from the atomic clock?
Yes.
I
Oh
was just
my
about
God,
to ask.
that's
amazing.
So yeah, atomic clock watch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you get that big tone.
That's the minute, and then now it's doing seconds
and
afterwards.
then a human being will pop in and say like, "Hey, you're listening to Universal Time."
I like to believe it's the Fonz. He's like, hey, you're listening to Universal Time.
Another Spanish station.
This is where we remind you that we shoot from Texas.
Yeah. California, same thing. And I'm just going up from 19 to 22 to 25 megahertz.
Just slowly creeping up.
Just creeping up. So that's a bit too low. So now we're down to 7 megahertz, and that's a nighttime frequency.
Got it. Oh, that's right, because
The
everything
lower
changes.
the frequency is better at night, so I'm going to go back up. That's music. So there's a side lobe action going on. There's a center lobe and then two side lobes. And that's amplitude modulation to a textbook.
Oh, wild.
The two side lobes are what give you the body of the sound. It's also why it requires more power to transmit AM.
What's the weirdest thing you've come across?
I have hit a number station.
Oh, that's great.
Spanish number station, yeah.
Did you ever listen to something and then there was maybe some weird sound and you woke up on the floor and your nose had been bleeding?
No, and or you know, I lost a kidney one time in a situation like that, though.
Same.
So this might be amateur radio, actually. I'm going to change this off of amplitude modulation and go into lower sideband. These are some gentlemen that are... Yes, I tuned off frequency and it went real muddy.
Yep.
There you go.
As a horn. I feel like they're about to announce that they landed on the moon.
So I don't know their location from us right now, but if we played with this a little bit for audio quality, we'd be able to pull it out as far as the sounds that they are in there. All the data's in there.
Oh, so we could take this signal, what we were getting right now, and just coax out audible conversations. Like better than what we're hearing now.
And
this is not as good as it gets.
This software has EQ capability as well.
Oh, wow.
So there's all kinds of little stuff you can play around with.
It's remarkable that we can't hear the words they're saying, but we can understand the tenor of the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, it's clearly a back and forth.
So as a curiosity, let's jump over to the amateur radio bands really fast.
As we're recording this, it's field day. Is that going to make everything just blow up for us?
So these are all signals of people talking right now. There you go.
0 Sierra Echo Kilo QRZ.
So they're exchanging the call sign exchange for field day right now.
Whiskey 5 Mike Lima Echo. Please copy Kilo 0 Sierra Echo Kilo. We are 1 Alpha Kansas.
Kansas! Oh, that's awesome!
Yeah.
Nice. Dude, that is
Got that 1
hundreds.
Echo there in Louisiana. Thank you, sir.
That's like 500 miles away.
So there's Kansas to Louisiana, and we're just sitting here listening to their conversation.
Right, and to be honest with you, that's not that big a deal. And the strength of their signal is an S9. That's how we register strength. S9 being real solid. Solid copy. So you can start, and you can actually see the intensity of the line is more vibrant as well.
Yeah, wow.
I've turned the filtering to CW, which makes the listenable portion of the frequency really tight.
Also lots of DC programming. Wait, yes? Yes? Subscribe? Click the bell? Yes.
That's CQ. That's faster than I can decode.
Oh no, I heard it perfectly. Become a boss at patreon.com/modernrogue. Oh wait.
He's really good.
Yeah.
Also subscribe to learn more about Josh's work. Where?
Ham Radio Crash Course?
Ham Radio Crash Course?
Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, no, they're agreeing.
Yeah.
They say it's great.
Copy.
They say this is awesome. And they say thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us,
Yeah.
man. That was freaking
Thanks.
great. Scam it. Do you even remember the first time you tried and probably failed to make a website on your own?
It was on a notebook, and I drew it and said, "This is a functional website."
I mean, I
didn't have a computer.
Man, I remember using Dreamweaver, Microsoft Front Page, that would just break everything and make it awful.
Yeah.
God, the world was a garbage dumpster fire before our friends at Squarespace. I remember meeting the folks who started Squarespace right at the very beginning, like 10 years ago, and the moment I understood, the moment I grokked what they were up to, I'm like, oh, this is perfect. They're allowing people to focus on the message, not the medium. You have something to say, they will make it possible for everybody to experience it. Everything from beautiful website design to drag and drop interfaces to if you are a CSS wizard, you can do all of that stuff.
That drag and drop interface is my favorite. It is beautiful and elegant. You grab something, try it out. No, that doesn't look good. And instead of going in and writing new lines of code and taking out others, You grab it and put it back where it goes.
On top of all of that, man, they prepare you for success because they're distributed hosting. Even if you're an overnight sensation, you're gonna be totally covered with Squarespace. In fact, don't take my word for it, and I see that skepticism in your eyes. Head on over to squarespace.com/rogue, sign up for a free trial. If you don't like it, say backsies, no harm, no foul. But when you do sign up, and everybody will, make sure to use promo code ROGUE, that's ROGUE, and you get 10% off.
What are you waiting for? Don't be like me, the poor kid who didn't have a computer, drawing pictures of websites in his notebook. It's a true story.
Escalated very quickly.
It's a tender spot.
I
I didn't have Squarespace when I was a kid.
Squarespace does not cause you to become insecure like this.
When I opened up my notebook, you know what I would do? I would look at my favorite website and I would go beep, beep, and I would make the dial-up thing. You don't have to do that.
I'm gonna get a soda. You want something?
Yeah, I'll be here.
Yeah.
I gotta, all right. No caffeine.
So what's the weirdest place you've hanged one of these from?
Last night at the 15th floor of my hotel, same 2 lines of wire. Nothing like this. I have much shorter wire. Just throw that sucker right off the balcony.
No kidding. Yeah. So you were at the top of it.
The ground portion just snaked into the room, and I just ran it right off like that.